Hey, Mel. Bri here. Gotta work from home today because the whole family caught a nasty...
Daddy!
Hey, Mikey! If you're gonna puke, find the popcorn bowl! But my availability is 110%. Coincidentally, so is my fever. Kidding. Mel, I'm so cold but hot. But I'm gonna get you that budget just as soon as... Mikey! Popcorn bowl!
Press 1 to use Instacart and get your family's sick day essentials delivered in as fast as 30 minutes. Press 2 to keep working. Do not press 2. Just use Instacart, Brian.
Imagine the softest sheets you've ever felt. Now imagine them getting even softer over time. I'm here to tell you about Boll & Branch sheets. In a recent customer survey, 96% replied that Boll & Branch sheets get softer with every wash. They're made from the rarest organic cotton and designed to get even softer over time. Try their sheets with a 30-night guarantee plus 15% off your first order with code Odyssey. So head to BOLLandbranch.com today. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
Welcome to the PowerCat Podcast, GoPowerCat.com's Kansas State Athletics Show. Now, here's your host, GoPowerCat publisher, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to this week's edition of the PowerCat Questions Podcast. Tim Fitzgerald, Zach Carlson, Ryan Gilbert. We're back together. Gills is back from Las Vegas, where he had a lot of fun. He met some fun people. He played a lot of
poker. Lost a lot of money.
Watched his Steelers beat the Raiders.
Twirled a towel around on national television.
Yeah. Made an appearance on the pregame show.
Shout out to Wally for
only Wally with his eagle eyes could spot that.
Yeah, nobody else.
You looked so happy in that.
I was in my happy place.
Oh, just waving your growl towel.
So I was walking around the parking lot.
Towel.
Terrible towel.
And
some dude, I was walking by the SNF set where they do the pregame show, and he's like, "Hey, you guys want to be on TV?" I was like, "Sure."
Okay.
So we all got in a line, and
you took your pants off, and then said, "No, I can't do that." We're sponsored by The Fridge, which is a liquor store, but so much more. Get in there and get all of your party needs. They've got snacks. They've got your mixers, and they got even fruit and whatever. And if you're in there to buy alcohol, they've got an expert on every section of the store. Just ask for help. There's no place in Aggieville or Manhattan that can help you like the experts at The Fridge. Make sure you stop into The Fridge at the corner of this and that in the town in which we live. Also, before I forget, if you're not a subscriber to Go PowerCat and you're all in on this Kansas State football team, 2 months, $1. That's a special that lit up at midnight last night or yesterday. I'm getting confused when I'm speaking and when they're hearing. But
yes,
$2. Jeez, Zach, I'm
2 months.
2 months,
$1.
So basically, if you subscribe right now, you will get all of October and November of football season, and even I don't even know when the championship game is. Even leading into the championship game. You'll get all that for $1. $1 stinking dollar. And then that's a 2-month test drive. And if you're smart, you just keep it going. Just keep it going and stay on Go PowerCat. $2 for a month, but that ends soon. It's a flash sale. It ends sometime this week. Thursday?
I think Thursday.
Yeah.
You got to get it done by Thursday.
Don't mess around. Go click that green join button, get it going, and let's get going with the PowerCat podcast. And the questions from Wabash Station asked by the very VIPs you can become. Ryan Gilbert, go.
Good job, Fitz. Good job. Before we recorded, you told me to remind you to say, I didn't have to remind you.
I reminded myself.
Good job.
Tim, don't be an idiot. I hear that voice in my head a lot. Go ahead.
All right, let's go because Zach's in a hurry.
Zach's got to play golf.
Biggity Bass Cat is new to the site.
I'm sorry, what?
Biggity Bass Cat.
That's a great name.
Or is it bass?
Bass? I don't know. I think
is it bass or bass
theme right now?
Is it fishing or is it guitar? I don't know.
Biggity. Why would it be biggity? Oh, it could be biggity bass. Anyhow, we're going with bass.
Tell us if we're wrong.
With it being a new member, it's got to be the fishing theme they're going off of.
A lot of fishing going on right now.
Yeah. Anyways.
You know what bass is? It's B with an ass on it. There you go.
No cursing.
Sorry.
Does the 48-0 beatdown of Oklahoma State last year still linger in either team's mind? Does OSU presumably come in motivated to get revenge? Does K-State come in confident that they can whoop the Pokes again?
Well, we have someone on our panel here with a unique insight of Oklahoma State. He was one of them. He was part of he was aspiring to be one of the paddle kids. What do they call them?
Paddle people.
Paddle people.
That's what they're called.
So politically correct, even for the ag school. The paddle people, which is, by the way, one of my favorite things in the Big 12. Zach, is Oklahoma State done, or was that an aberration last year? That's a big word, Gil. Say, don't look it up.
I don't know. When you look at what they've done this year, I think that you would expect K-State to have similar success to last season. But, it's a weird game. It's a night game on a Friday night.
After an off
week, I think anything can happen. I think that, if Oklahoma State is going to rescue their season, they need to win on Friday. I think it's a must-win for them. If they are going to continue their long bowl streak, if they are going to, play for Mike Gundy, I think it happens this week if it happens. But on the other hand, K-State looked really good against them last year. They've struggled in the past in Stillwater, and I think they're ready to make that move and get over the hump. Because if K-State wins this game, it gets a lot easier to look down the schedule and say, well, that game's winnable, that game's winnable, that game's winnable. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a blowout, but I like where the spread's at. What is it, about 12 points?
12.5.
12.5.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could see this being a 10-point game for sure. I think that K-State wins, but I think it could be a little closer than what, I'm not terribly confident in a beatdown like last year from K-State.
Gilbert, I feel like this is their Alamo. They got to build their walls and defend their home fort as best they can. They can't afford to lose, let alone lose dramatically. This is not a good Oklahoma State team, and it's not because of a lack of skill, although they might have that at quarterback. It's just because they're not bought in. There's no locker room environment, from what I'm told. He's just kind of lost his team, which is horrible. And maybe you can regain that in an off week. I don't know. I talked about it in the walk and talk. It's impossible. There's a lot of unknowns here. I would lean on the side of a K-State 3-touchdown victory more than a loss. But again, it's hard to read exactly how this will play out. But this is why this is so important. First of all, I would like to say how odd Oklahoma State's schedule is. The Big 12 did them no favors. They have no games in Texas this year. Well, they have one game at Houston, none with the current Texas schools, none. So they play this game, and then next week they have KU coming in, and they're pretty good. Then Cincinnati. Do they really have all these games? Oh, they got at West Virginia, and then Cincinnati, and then Oklahoma, okay? At UCF, at Houston, then they play BYU. They play all four newcomers and none of the existing Texas schools. It just doesn't make sense how their schedule got lined up. It should be a really friendly schedule to them, but it's not. Now that they've gotten into the season, they're not. If they don't beat K-State, they're not beating KU. They're not winning at West Virginia. They're not beating Oklahoma. They're not winning at UCF, and BYU might get them in Stillwater. This is a complete meltdown. If they get blown out by K-State, that program is just going to fly apart. And I know a lot of Oklahoma State fans now are kind of on that weird spot that fans get in when their coach is struggling, the team's struggling. Like, yeah, I want to win this game, but if we lose and it's really bad, maybe we'll have a new coach. So it's an interesting situation in Stillwater. How quickly they've gone south, and really it started with K-State's blowout last year.
If this was a normal Mike Gundy team, then absolutely this is – I mean, it is a must-win for Oklahoma State, but the urgency, is that going to be there? And that's a question mark. Maybe Mike Gundy, after a bye week, is able to turn his locker room around and get them to buy in. There's still a real chance for them to make a bowl game if they can beat Kansas State, but that's far from a given. That's far from a guarantee just because of the way that this season has started for Oklahoma State. If this was a two-loss Oklahoma State team that had lost a couple games by a couple points, then, boy, you're scared if you're Kansas State. Coming off of a bye week, the Cowboys are going to be ready. But Both teams are coming off of a bye. Kansas State, with its Big 12 title aspirations, needs this win just as much as Oklahoma State needs it for themselves. And so Kansas State's bought in. Oklahoma State may or may not be bought in right now.
They beat Central Arkansas 27-13 to open the season. I mean, right there's a red flag. They then go to Arizona State, which might be the worst Power 5 program out there right now, and only win 27-15. So we see some consistency here. They come home at 2-0. Coach Michael Smith and the South Alabama Jaguars pound them 33-7 in Stillwater. Then they go to Iowa State, and we all know how potent Iowa State's offense is. They score 34 points to win 34-27. I don't see how a week solves this problem, but I might be wrong.
From Jay Boland, PSU, what does the outcome need to be this Friday for you to feel good about the game? Obviously a win, but referencing more to the performance itself.
Well, you're entering a phase here of very winnable games, but you need to assert your identity. Now, let's go back a year ago when K-State beat Oklahoma State 48-0. What did they do the next week? They went to Baylor and thumped them. So I feel like this game could play a pretty significant role in leading up to next week's trip to Texas Tech, which I still see as a fairly significant challenge, even though Tech's had some struggles. They have some talent. He's Jerry Maguire. I do it every time. Joey Maguire is a good coach. He's a high school coach. You know that? Just coaching college football. Made that clear 2 years ago at Big 12 Media Days.
Hey, football's football.
Football's football, except the players are a lot bigger and you have to recruit them at college. Anyhow, I think it does play a role. I think K-State should and will win this game with the comfort level, but 48-0, that ain't happening. That was everything lining up and going right for K-State, but it's now K-State's time to kind of become a bully. They bullied UCF in the second half. They pushed them around at the point of attack. K-State's offensive and defensive lines are good enough to push everyone around in this conference with one exception. And, if you can get to that exception in 4 weeks, in 4 games, at 7-1 when you go to Texas, by far the most talented and potent team in this conference, then you've got a fighting chance. You don't even have to win that game, though. You just have to, come out of it at 7-2 and continue to play good football, because then your next toughest game is at Kansas, which I think KU's pretty good. I'm bought in for the most part if Jalen Daniels is quarterback, and that's an ongoing question. But there's no reason why, looking at the schedule, K-State shouldn't be 10-2 and 8-1 in the Big 12 at season's end, and probably returning to Arlington to play Texas again. And we know what happened last year when K-State played a team that lost to in the regular season in the Big 12 title game. We'll just to see what happens. But this one, you got to get some momentum coming out of it.
I will say no big plays on defense is what I would really like to see as far as just on the field, the performance. Cut those out. If you win the game and you still give up a few of those big plays on defense, there's still question marks on this team.
Guys, they've played Central Arkansas, Arizona State, South Alabama, and Iowa State, and they're only averaging 343 yards of offense a game. Their offense is one of the worst in the Big 12. Only because the Big 12 is stinky this year is it not the worst. But they're just not moving the ball with any consistency. The quarterback play is far below average. You can try as many quarterbacks as you have on the roster. They're all bad. You're playing the least bad of your options right now in Bowman.
I think for me, if they win by 10, I'd be fine with it. I'm not going to be disappointed by a 10-point win, but I think
unless you bet on K-State to cover.
Sure. If you do that, then sure. But I don't plan on.
If Will Howard goes and slides down at the 1 yard line to run out the clock and cost you a cover.
Great football play. Terrible bank account play. But if K-State is up, let's say 2 touchdowns midway through the second quarter, is probably about the point where you feel good about the game. And then if they're able to keep putting on points from there, they've been really good about getting points on that first drive, getting touchdowns each week. Can they get more points earlier in the game in that first half? What can the halftime score be? Because I think that's the biggest thing that I would want to see is how much of a lead can you take into the break?
You're right. If it gets too significant, particularly if it's significant and Kansas State gets the ball to start the second half, I think Oklahoma State quits.
Make teams quit early.
Yep.
I agree.
Can we do T-shirts with that? I like it. Hashtag make teams quit early.
Did you say quick?
I did.
Make teams quit quickly.
It's a bad screen print mistake. Sending those shirts out of the country.
My brain once again offered a different word than what my mouth was seeking.
Like in bath.
Let's move on.
NBAF, like I once said. From KSU number 1, how insulting is it that K-State actually dropped out of the polls and 2 lost teams are still ranked?
Well, there's only one, LSU, I believe. I think. I did my daily delivery on that today. The whole circumstances are frustrating for me because K-State was 17, right? And they lost to Missouri and dropped out of the poll. You lose at an SEC program upon their home field by 3 points at the buzzer, and you drop 10 spots, essentially. They dropped to 27. That made no sense to me. It still doesn't make sense to me. But now we're finding out Missouri's actually good. They're 5-0. They've got LSU this weekend. And Kansas State still seems to be carrying the tag with voters that they have a bad loss. So they were 25th in the AP poll, which is, the media poll last week. And then we saw Louisville and Kentucky win some games. They're now unbeaten. They needed to be in the poll, but other teams lost and stayed in the poll. And K-State won their previous game, had a bye, and dropped out of the poll. They're still being tagged with a bad loss in the mind of voters, the same voters that now have Missouri 20th. And if they beat LSU, we'll probably try to put them in the top 10 because it's the SEC, right? But apparently losing to that same team is bad for Kansas State. None of it makes sense. I think poll voters are generally lazy. It used to be a big deal to be a poll voter, and now I get the feeling it's just a nuisance, and they don't put in the homework. It used to be a big deal. You were chosen to be it, and you took it very seriously. And I don't think this generation of voters really cares that much.
I agree with you, Fitz. K-State, when you do the math between Mizzou, they're unbeaten. K-State loses to them literally on a 60-plus yard field goal. It shouldn't be that bad of a loss for the polls. But at the same time, we're talking about week 5, week 6 polls. Does it really matter? I don't think it matters at this point.
It does matter. Not at this point, but if you've got so much ground to make up.
I get that. But also, if you win out and if you win the Big 12 championship game, I don't think that K-State's going to be outside of the top 4.
Well, we'll find out. I mean, if they're a one-loss team and win the Big 12 title, yeah, but I can still see some voters, if Missouri ends up 8-4, going, that's a bad loss. No, it's not. I mean, you forgive some really bad performances by name brands. It's incredible to me how they justify that.
I mean, Georgia's going to lose a game this year.
There's no outstanding
They are
team.
not the number 1 team in the country.
Hey, God bless the NIL. It has evened the tables a lot more than we ever imagined. And plus, also, we're seeing the last remnants of the COVID year. Will Howard and any true freshmen who played in the COVID season of 2020 will be the last ones that could declare next season for a 6th year. It's absolutely amazing to me, but I think that's even the tables. It's allowed some of these programs, let's be honest, players aren't staying for their COVID year at Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State. They're off to the NFL, or the coaches want them off the roster so they can get an NFL guy. They are at these schools. It's making a difference, but the NIL now is allowing schools like Kansas State to make sure an Avery Johnson stays at home. I'm not saying they got him because of the NIL, but his value to the Kansas State program would be higher than his value to a Notre Dame or even an Oregon. It just is. And I think it's allowing programs to keep some guys that are very valuable to their program. I'm all in.
If K-State's not ranked after next week, if they win, yeah, it's an issue. But I don't think that's going to happen.
This ranking conversation, though, really is probably going to matter more in a 12-team playoff, because if you're the bona fide number 1 in the Big 12, you're probably getting in, right? If you're 9-3, then you're kind of on the bubble for that spot. Then these rankings truly are going to matter. every week.
I agree. I mean, if Kansas State would lose 2 more games, end up 7-2 in the conference, 9-3 overall, even if those losses were to Texas, and guys, there's no one else of value on this. Let's say, I'm not going to say Kansas because I think without their quarterback, they're going to be mediocre.
West Virginia is getting better.
Well, they don't play them.
Oh,
there's this weird.
Hypothetically, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they had Oklahoma and lost to Texas and Oklahoma went 6-6 or whatever, I still don't think Kansas State gets in with 3 losses. I think 2 losses, even in a 12-team playoff, they'll be pushing the envelope because the same people that sit out there and say, we got to play the games, are going to look at an SEC team at 9-3 and say, well, they played a tougher schedule. When in reality, they probably didn't. They probably didn't because every conference has their bottom feeders. And, I would argue against anyone from the Big Ten with 2 conference losses isn't worthy of the playoff at 12 teams because that conference is horse crap.
See, I think with 12 teams and no Pac-12, I think your championship game participants are in the playoff. Like, I think a championship game potentially becomes redundant. It might hurt you at that point once the conference or once the playoff expands.
Well, I guess that's a good way to look at it. Like K-State loses twice to Texas and has a loss to Missouri and now at 10-3.
Yeah.
I can see, well, they've lost 3 games. We can't put them for Big 12 team lost 3 games. I can see it.
But you're the second best team in your conference, so you should be in the playoff. I don't know.
The thing about when they announced, they're going to go to 5 automatic bids and 7 at-large bids, that's all great. I want to know how you're picking the committee. That's my thought. Is the committee going to be balanced across college football, or is the committee going to have more SEC and Big Ten teams represented on it, schools represented on it than everyone else?
I mean, it's even right now, is it not?
That's exactly it. They've changed the rules. I want to know if the rules for the committee have changed, because that's an SEC trick I can see them pulling. Okay, we'll only guarantee our champion. We get that, but we're going to have 4 schools on the committee. That kind of crap. We are college football. We're going to have 4. Daphne agrees, 100%.
Last question of the first half from Momo Cat.
Momo!
Will this be the first year in who knows how long that we won't have a kickoff or punt return for a touchdown?
You're going to get one. Said with no confidence.
You sure?
I don't know. When was the last time they didn't have one? It hasn't been that long, has it? I thought there was a season within the last 10 that didn't have anything, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
The easiest part of the pregame edge for me is always special teams. Okay, just type in a sentence, they'll get a splash play. And that hasn't happened this year. And I think this week with Oklahoma State, it's finally going to be time for me to say no. Until you prove it, there's no guarantees in special teams. And Randon Plattner was the highlight of K-State special teams against UCF. We love Randon, but that's not necessarily a good thing.
What a great tackle, though. He was the only one that read that fake punt return. That was brilliant by UCF. It was compounded by the fact that the punt went 69 yards, so the guy that was sneaking back had to go a long ways to go get it. But I was fooled. Didn't look up at the punt. I looked up while the punt was in the air, so I didn't locate the ball. And I fell for the guy doing the fake catch. But Plattner didn't, and then he had an open field tackle. He's going to be teaching that class on campus next season. Open field tackling, advanced open field tackling.
I really do want to know. Maybe we should look this up in the break. When the last time it happened?
We better break so we can look that up. When was the last time K-State didn't have a special teams touchdown?
I don't even know how to find it.
I'll look it up.
We'll be back in an hour.
GoPowerCat.com's PowerCat podcast continues after this short break.
If you're in the market for investment-worthy bags, watches, and fine jewelry, Rebag is the answer. Rebag is a luxury resale marketplace where each piece is carefully vetted and verified by experts to ensure quality and authenticity. If you're in the market, use Rebag to buy and sell finds from the world's top brands, including Hermes, Chanel, and Cartier. Head to Rebag.com to get 10% off your first purchase with code REBAG10. Shop today at Rebag.com. That's REBAG.com and use promo code REBAG10 for 10% off your first purchase.
Welcome back to the PowerCat podcast.
Welcome back to the PowerCat Questions Podcast, sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. I know you're not coming to town for a football game in quite a while, because this is a weird 2 games on the road after a bye week stretch of games here. But when you do, make sure you come to the Fridge Wholesale Liquor and check them out. Make sure you get all of your pregame party needs right there. Short drive then to the parking lot, and let the party begin with fresh liquor and beer right from the orchards of the Fridge, picked right of the day of the game.
The orchards.
The orchards. We are efforting to find this stat for you. I'm at 2012 when we're still seeing a return for a touchdown every season. I'm going to go into 11 now. It just takes a while.
I think that I was wrong. It has happened a lot. We don't know. It's been
at least 10 years.
At least 10 years.
Yeah. It's been at least 10 years since Kansas State did not have a return in terms of punt or kickoff for a touchdown. Here we are at 2011. And this guy named Tyler Lockett had 2 touchdown returns. Did he ever pan out to anything? Did he? Is he like selling cars now somewhere? I don't know.
I wonder if he likes the rain and clouds.
Anyhow, on with your questions from Wildfire Station. Remember, we're having a sale right now, 2 months for $1. Usually we have the test drive of 1 month for $1, but this will get you through the end of the football regular season. 2 months for $1 at GoPowerCat.com. It ends this week. Do not mess around. Just hit the pause on the podcast right now and go do it. And then come back, and we'll still be here. That's what's cool about a podcast. We're just waiting to talk to you personally. Whenever you want us to talk to you, we will. I wonder if that will become a thing. I wonder if AI will be able to like replicate my answers and then just, have like fits on demand in my voice. That's scary because it's not that far.
It'd be a lot better than you.
Yeah, true. And let's move on now to your questions from Wabash Station from the only guy AI could never replicate, the one and only
Zach Carlson.
Right, Ryan Gilbert. Ryan Gilbert. That was a setup for you. Go.
From Big Sam. If you want to be like Big Sam, you could be a VIP subscriber and ask questions. But Big Sam wants to know, in light of this week's results and game action, is it possible some of the down teams on K-State's schedule are more of a concern than we thought a week ago?
No, I mean, I don't think Baylor's very good. I think Baylor overthought their game plan with UCF, and then they decided, hey, what if we run the ball? And they just started to dominate that game. Until UCF figures it out, they're going to get their ass kicked. They're going to get their butts kicked in Lawrence on Saturday because KU can just line up and run the ball even if they don't have Jalen Daniels. So I think what happened with Baylor was just an oddity, and I don't think they're very good. I think Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Houston, and Cincinnati are all pretty mediocre. Cincinnati maybe is the best of that group. I still can't explain why Vegas had Cincinnati a favorite to win at BYU. It made no sense to me, and watching the game, it made no sense. So, yeah, I think K-State's got to open the door not to win most of these games. They just simply do.
I think it's interesting that West Virginia and Oklahoma, Texas and K-State are all I don't know what the analytics was, but some site put out their rankings, computer rankings. Those were the only 4 teams that had a greater than 1% chance to win the Big 12 championship. And 2 of those teams are not on K-State's schedule. So I think that if you look at that, and based on that, I think it's pretty easy to see a path for K-State to the championship game. Just, I think that the down teams are down, and the teams that may be looking up, K-State doesn't have to play.
True. West Virginia has been the biggest surprise of the conference this year. I'm not sold on Oklahoma. I think they get thumped this weekend, but they don't have many tough games on their schedule. It's going to be very interesting if Oklahoma and K-State get to the end of the regular season with 1 conference loss and didn't have a head-to-head game, and they played Texas but both lost. I mean, that'll be interesting to see where we get to the tiebreaker before they decide who's in.
Would K-State and OU be the only 2 lost the only 2 1-loss teams, or would Texas?
Well, that changes everything.
Be undefeated?
if Texas is undefeated and K-State and Oklahoma are the 2 one-loss teams,
we'll get through we will get through the tiebreakers in a little bit.
I'm going to pull Zach and say, hold this conversation.
Yeah, we'll get to those.
See, I don't know the questions. How am I supposed to know that you guys were plotting against me?
We weren't plotting against you.
Okay, that's not. I'm at 2007.
You're still going.
Ron Prince has kept up the magic so far. Let's check his first season.
Jermaine Morera in 2006.
Well, he had a guy named Jordy Nelson, too.
So I just remember that first game. Jermaine Morera is running down, and then Prince is running with him. Everyone thought that Prince was the real deal because he did that.
Yeah, we were wrong.
I mean, he seems like a pretty good coach if he had a team with a return touchdown, right?
That's what matters at Special Teams U.
Yeah, that's what matters for this podcast.
He wasn't a bad coach. He was just a horrible human being. He couldn't keep his program together. So let's go to the next question.
Real quick, I will say that I don't think any of K-State's teams, the programs on the schedule are going to get maybe tougher to beat. But Kansas State getting injured is going to be the biggest thing that might hinder the K-State's chances of having games get more or less difficult. I don't know what I'm saying, but injuries for
you're
K-State.
just saying
right?
words.
I think it's less about what other teams do. It'd be more of what K-State can or can't do.
I'd agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Came to Elevate. Next question from Came to Elevate. In light of how weak most of the Big 12 is looking, is there a path to the Big 12 championship game for K-State if they have 2 conference losses?
Well, again, it comes to those tiebreakers.
Well, before the tiebreakers, it comes down to, looking at other teams' schedules and seeing, where there are going to be 2 losses. I think OU is probably the biggest competitor for that number 2 spot with K-State. If it comes to, we're assuming a loss at Texas. We're assuming a loss to someone that's not going to be in the tiebreaker situation. So, you're probably looking at, hoping that OU gets a second loss, and then you'd have to go through all the tiebreaker procedures, it's still later in the podcast. We will ask another question about that.
There's an interesting situation here. I think Oklahoma's got an easy schedule. I mean, they play Texas this weekend. Then they have UCF coming in to Norman, and I think they should win that based on what we're seeing now. Then they go to Kansas, and that could be a trap game for them if Jalen Daniels is healthy. Then they go to Oklahoma State. Then they have West Virginia coming in, and they go to BYU, and then they end with TCU in Norman. These are winnable.
West
games.
Virginia could be a tough one for them, though.
Maybe.
I don't know. That's probably like looking at KU and saying that could be a tough game for them. I don't know.
I mean, seriously,
yeah.
Oklahoma could be 11-1 with their only loss to Texas and not be a good team. That's how bad the conference is. I mean, they'll be good, but not a great team. And that's exactly why I think K-State should be at least 10-2. Same principle. The conference is, I knew Oklahoma had an easy schedule, but the conference is far worse than I expected. So there's a lot of wins out there.
Whoever loses on Saturday between Texas and Oklahoma, if you're a K-State fan, you want them to lose one more time, right? And whoever wins that game, especially if it's Oklahoma, then you want Texas to lose, obviously, to Kansas State. But if not, you want the loser of that game to lose again, right? The winner can go undefeated for all we care, or for all K-State fans care, right? I mean, if you can squeeze into the second spot,
oh,
fine.
Absolutely, just like they did last year. And they literally squeezed in because it took a Texas losing, a third game to get them in there.
I think somebody asked this. I didn't put it in the questions, so apologies to not answering your question by name. But if you're K-State, who would you rather win this week, Texas or OU?
I think Texas.
I think you want Texas since you play them head to head, and if you're able to beat them, that gives you significant advantage if Texas beats OU.
Yeah,
Sure.
And plus, it just again, if Oklahoma beats Texas, who's going to beat Oklahoma again?
Yeah.
I mean, if they're capable of beating Texas, then they're not losing again unless they really screw up. And then it comes down to, can you beat Texas in Austin? And I don't see that happening.
No.
So, yeah. I mean, you could potentially be a one-loss Big 12 team and not get in the championship game.
Ouch. Crazy.
Speaks volumes to how weak the bottom is.
Yeah, it does. It sounds, when you put it that way, it sounds like, man, you got 3 good teams there. No, actually, it means
3.
the bottom sucks because there's just a bunch of wins on the schedule.
Reminds you of the SEC, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I have an answer, by the way. Is this a good place to put in the answer?
Sure. Put in the answer.
The last time Kansas State did not score a special teams touchdown on a punt or kickoff return, 2004.
Who was the returner?
Probably
Why are you asking
Darren
me-
Sproles.
Why are you asking me these questions?
Probably.
Yamon
he not
Figures.
score?
Yamon Figures and Darren Sproles did the punts.
Gosh.
And kickoff was primarily Sproles. He had as long as 79, but did not get in the end zone.
So it sounds like this Darren Sproles guy just didn't
Washed.
do anything after
He's like that Lockett guy. I have no idea what happened to either one of them.
From claws out, balls out. Is that it? Sorry.
That's good.
okay.
That sounds kind of painful.
Gosh.
Okay, go ahead.
It does. Yeah, it does. Interesting.
Did you
Without-
experience that in Vegas? Never mind. Go ahead.
No more questions.
No more questions.
regarding that.
Yeah.
Without divisions and because of tiebreakers, are we going to see more teams running up the scores moving forward?
Okay, we can get into the tiebreaker procedures here. So
Tiebreaker for the Big 12 doesn't matter. Or the spread doesn't matter, does it?
no, so that question there, if it gets down to quote unquote point differential, that's not a tiebreaker. The tiebreaker, when you get all the way down to right before coin toss, is the highest ranking by Sports Source Analytics, and it is a team rating score metric following the last weekend of regular season games. So it is an algorithm that will. This is guys. Don't freak out.
I'm freaking out.
This is all the way down the list.
Well, but no.
Right, but
It used to be the college football playoff rankings.
right, but and I looked this up. The ACC, I think it was 2016. They used this same company, or they would have had there been a 3-way tie for a certain scenario. They paid like $10,000 for this. I don't know. I'm sure the Big 12 is paying 5 figures or something for this analytics. I tried looking up to see if you could plug it in and see, but you can't really figure it out right now. So it's kind of a secret thing. And if it gets down to this, it's going to be disastrous. But before that, the tiebreakers are win percentage against the next highest common opponent. So if you're tied with, let's say, Oklahoma, Texas is going to be the highest opponent if you're K-State, theoretically.
Okay, so K-State shares opponents with Oklahoma. I got to find the right season here. Jeez,
Yeah.
let's back up here.
Texas.
Of course, Texas. Iowa State, which they beat. UCF, Kansas, Oklahoma State, not West Virginia, not BYU, and TCU. So as those teams fall in the standings, as they rank in the standings, they'll go to whoever's the second best team behind Texas that on a shared schedule. Did you both beat them? Okay. See, the problem is that they both end up 10-1, or 8-1 in the conference with their lone loss to Texas. None of that will be accurate. They'll all have beaten everyone. They both will have beaten everyone else. So you'll get down that list pretty quickly.
Yeah. Then the next one is win percentage against the next highest place. Did I just say that? The next highest placed?
Well, it goes down.
Yeah, head to head. Then
bottom.
common. Yeah, you go through all your common opponents, and if you run out of common opponents, it's the win percentage against all common conference opponents,
Which would be the same.
which would be the same, I think.
Yeah, it has to be. If you're 8-1 in the conference with a shared loss, it's going to come down to that metric.
And then the fourth tiebreaker is combined win percentage in conference games of conference opponents. So the conference opponents, so everyone you played, I think everyone that you played together, maybe.
It all works out equal.
No, this is your opponents. So how they played. So like, let's say K-State plays TCU, and TCU does well, and KU does well, and Iowa State does well, and then let's say that BYU and Cincinnati do poorly. That's where K-State would beat OU in this tiebreaker scenario. It's not all the same
That
thing.
might work on K-State's
That is
advantage.
probably where most tiebreakers are going to end, is
So-
based on opponent. If it gets that far.
Layman's terms, what was that?
So you take the 9 teams that you did play, and you average out their conference record, what their winning, losing percentage are in conference games compared to the 9 teams Kansas State played.
So it's basically strength of schedule.
Yes.
Essentially, yes.
As it played out on the field. Yeah, you're right.
And then after that, it becomes total number of wins in a 12-game season. So that's where K-State would trip up. If you're going against OU, that loss at Mizzou potentially could, if you lose to Texas, and if OU's only losses to Texas, and K-State's 8-1, and OU's 8-1.
OU, of all schools, benefits from not playing a Power 5 in the non-conference. Now, look, they had a great reason why they couldn't, but still, Arkansas State, SMU, and Tulsa is trash. Well, they throttled SMU. They're pretty good. Don't give me the SMU's pretty good. Don't do that. No. Nope. I'm not falling for it. Are you falling for it, Gilbert? You look like you're falling for it.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, so it would be... Yeah, so tiebreakers 2 and 3, you'd think that they would be the same because your win percentage against all common opponents is the third tiebreaker, and then the second tiebreaker is next highest placed common opponent. If you don't get through all of those, you're surely going to have the same record there. But where it breaks is that fourth tiebreaker of your opponent's strength of schedule, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we've answered that question.
So there you go. I don't think we're going to have to get to Sports Source Analytics, but if we do, the conspiracies will fly.
Well, we won't because of the loss to Missouri.
Where's it headquartered at? Is it in the state of Texas?
I don't know. The ACC used it, or they planned on using it at some point.
Man, I hope this company is some nerd coder that loves sports, and he's making all this money just working on his basement, just like it's all doing it automatically when the results come in, and he's just making a mint. I want that. I love that for him or her. I love it.
He's just hoping he gets tapped on. Hey, we need the algorithm. It's time.
I find it very interesting that conferences trust this selected source. It must be thought of as accurate, highly accurate, by season's end. Most algorithms don't mean jack until the end because you don't have all the data.
It wouldn't surprise me if point differential was a part of the algorithm.
Yep. So maybe Gilbert is right. No, I hate it when he's right.
What if it is just point differential?
That's all it is.
They don't want to say it.
Like some guys charge a big money for this. It's just point. He literally didn't even have an algorithm. Or he just writes down the numbers.
Or it's just a front.
Maybe he writes all of them down, puts them in a hat, and here you go.
Hey, my name's Tony. I run the sports analytics. I would like you to pay me to make your team higher. That's how it's going to work.
It's a ping pong ball.
Back to our ping pong ball. Ryan Gilbert with your next question.
Interesting. Is that a compliment?
Yeah, no.
Thank you. Okay.
No.
Last question. Basketball from Cardio Cat 78.
Are you going to answer this one?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Does Jerome Tang and K-State have the additions and year of experience to take this team to the Big 12 championship this year?
And now we turn it over to Go Power Cat's own basketball analytics expert, your coverage god of K-State basketball, Ryan Gilbert.
If you want my opinion, that'll cost you about $500,000.
Ryan Gilbert's no longer with the company, so we're going to have to move on.
No, that would be my quick answer to this. I think the Big 12A is a lot better this year, especially at the top. It's going to be really hard to get past Kansas. And then there's a lot of, 3, 4, 5 teams that have a good chance to make a run as well. So I'll go no. Naquan Tomlin has to stay out of foul trouble, stay on the court, and really take that step forward. Cam Carter's got to be a star. Kaluma, things have to pan out with Perry as well. A lot of things are going to have to go right for this K-State team to even flirt with the Big 12 championship. Be a top half team in the Big 12, no question. To get to that, to be a champion in the Big 12, man, that's tough. I mean, what KU did in the portal is spooky scary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, except for that one guy. Got arrested. That guy.
This is true.
He never mind.
See, I think the answer to the question is...
It's going to be a funny joke, but completely inappropriate.
Yeah. I don't know if last year's experience and the additions are going to be enough. Because I think last year going into the season at this same point, I would have said K-State would be lucky to make the first 4 of the tournament based on what, the roster turnover, the coaching change, the fact that Jerome Tang had never been a head coach before. I mean, there was a lot of question marks going into last season, and he over-delivered. The entire team over-delivered. I don't want to be overconfident based on what last year was and the additions, because they lost a couple of key pieces.
Yes, I'd say so.
So maybe they can win it, but at the same time, maybe they can be 7th or 8th in the conference. I would think top half. I would expect top half, 7 or higher. Sure. But I am willing to wait and see.
You are.
I am willing.
But you may not.
For you.
You may not. You're willing, but you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to discount anything from this program after what I saw last year. We thought they were picked last. Reminder, they were picked last, and they ended up pretty good. So I'm not going to put any kind of negative vibe on this program until I see the negative. Nobody expected what happened last season. Do I think Kaluma and Perry substitute in for Noel and Johnson? No. I mean, close, but, it's hard to assess what the assists from Marquise Noel meant for this team, his creativity meant for this team. But you mentioned one guy that needs to step up. I think the other roles in this team will be better this year. I just do. I think in a weird way they're going to miss Desi Sills as much as anybody because he was a disruptor off the bench. But I think they'll be fine. Will they win the Big 12? No. Look, KU's loading up. What did the NIL do? Everyone thought, well, the tables now are even on KU. If they're paying players, now everyone can. Well, now Adidas just pays them out in public as an NIL. I mean, it still is weird. But, if you're in with a good shoe company and they can do this, hell yeah. They're probably going to try to use the Adidas NIL for some football recruiting too. We'll see how it works out. I'm fired up for basketball. It's an interesting basketball schedule. Gills and I were talking about the number of road games to the new venues and distant venues and which ones we'll go to. We will find out. We'll explore that. But I can assure you of one thing. Now, whatever the most cost-efficient and convenient for the fans road to the Final Four would be for Kansas State, they will not be on that road. They will be in Brooklyn for the first round, and then I think there's a regional. I think there's a regional in Scandinavia. I might have read that wrong. I might have it wrong. And I think the Final Four is actually in sub-Saharan Africa this year. It's
in Abu Dhabi. K-State was just getting some scrimmages in there for where they're going to be in April.
Abu Dhabi doo. That's it for the podcast. You don't like my Flintstones Abu Dhabi joke?
I don't.
Okay. No. Zach doesn't like my jokes. That's how we're going to do the podcast. Nobody likes my jokes.
Thank you for listening to the Power Cat Podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to our show at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.
Spring training is right around the corner, which means it's time to start prepping for the fantasy baseball season. Join us on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, 4 times per week in January as part of the CBS Sports Podcast Network. Scott White, Chris Towers, and me, Frank Stanfield, will be delivering the latest news, rankings, and strategies in just 5 minutes. Make sure to download and follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, and everywhere else podcasts are found.